Now, we all know that Jim Ryan is no longer running the ship over at PlayStation. However, some of his statements a few years ago are very indicative of probably where we're going to end up with this whole thing, or actually where we are now. We're talking about day and date for PlayStation as if to say it's something that is still coming. And I think the marketing and the language and messaging has been so, intelligent that we are talking about something that already is as something that is already coming, that is still coming down the road. So I'm going to go ahead and read some of Jim Ryan's comments. I'm going to go ahead and read some of Herman Holtz's comments, and we're going to see that there is still this framework of which PlayStation sees an opportunity on the PC platform. So as of May this year, Herman Holtz has cited in different articles where he's revealing why Sony does not release most PS5 games on PC day and date. This article is reiterating something that had already been said in 2022, where they were talking about, PlayStation won't bring first party titles to PC for at least a year, except live service games. Previously, they had brought some of them that were 3 years old, some of them that were 2 years old, and so on and so forth. And so Herman Holtz is cited here saying, we have a dual approach here. On the live service side, we're releasing our titles simultaneously, so day and date, on PlayStation 5 and PC. But with our tentpole titles, our single-player, narrative-driven titles that are the backbone of what PlayStation Studios has delivered in recent years, and in our history, we take a more strategic approach. Holst, the new CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, said. Now, I was on some subreddit here on Gaming Leaks and Rumors, and 4 years ago, they put out this particular post saying Jim Ryan confirms more PlayStation exclusives headed to PC, starting with Days Gone. Well, yeah, Days Gone was, I think, the second one that moved its way up there. And so this article here on GQ pretty much showed that they were talking about it from the perspective of how PlayStation players saw the move and envisioned it. So that was the emphasis here in this particular GQ article. So this says, fair enough. So this is about VR and all kinds of other stuff. So releasing PlayStation games on PC was something that Sony PlayStation held back on for a long time. Now it sounds like you're very much on the bandwagon. What changed? And Jim Ryan at the time replied and said, I think a few things changed. We find ourselves now early in 2021 with our development studios and the games that they make in better shape than they've ever been before, particularly from the latter half of PS4 cycle. Our studios made some wonderful, great games. There's an opportunity to expose those great games to a wider audience and recognize the economics of game development. Interesting. Well, we've been talking about economics all this while. I mean, those are very critical pieces. Anyone who is leading a company like this has to be very concerned about the fiscal, health of that company, which are not always straightforward. The cost of making games goes up each cycle as the caliber of the IP has improved. Also, our ease of making it available to non-console owners has grown, so it's a fairly straightforward decision for us to make. Then the interviewer asked and said, this is following on from your publishing Horizon Zero Dawn on PC in August. Do y'all remember I showed you guys that, whole fiasco of when they published Horizon Zero Dawn on PC, how, a lot of PlayStation players concluded that this was going to devalue the brand. A lot of, PlayStation players said that, this is insane. This is, this is terrible, that they were doing something that, was going to make them not buy the console again. There's a whole Twitter thread that actually showcases this stuff. I've shown this in previous videos. If you want to see them, you can go back just and see that, Guerrilla Developer was basically trying to tone down some of the reactions that people were bringing around the time. So that's why this was kind of pivotal in the questionnaire. And he said, we assess the exercise in two ways. Firstly, in terms of the straightforward success of the activity of publishing the game on PC, people liked it and they bought it. So that was the first thing. People bought the game, right? And then the second thing was we also looked at it through the lens of what the PlayStation community thought about it. There was no massive adverse reaction to it, so we will continue to take mission steps in this direction. It appears that old Jim is saying that, well, at the end of the day, it wasn't really something that we saw a lot of people basically come out and throw a fit. Some threw a fit, but it wasn't too many. So we're just going to continue doing it. We're going to be moving our games to the PC platform. And just recently, we saw Lego Horizon Adventures pretty much be the one single player game that launched day and date on PC this year, as in a brand new instance. That was followed by, or at least preceded by, Until Dawn Remake, which is also some sort of a newish game that followed, in the entirety two live service games Concord. But more recently, Lost Soul Aside has also been advertised to launch on PC, which changes the game at the end of the day. So something has changed drastically. Because Lost Soul Aside, there could be arguments that this is a second-party game, but we also see the same thing from Stellar Blade, which was somewhat of a second-party game, was blocked from going to Xbox. Possibly Sony came in and helped with development. I don't know. However, having been published, was not published on PC day one compared to Lost Soul Aside. So whatever Jim is saying here in this particular article is that this is going to continue to happen. We know that, and Herman Holst and Nishino, the new co-CEOs, have not changed the business proposition yet. We also know that they want to stay strategic in the way they deliver these games, but now that strategy is starting to, in a sense, get modified. And a modification is most of these games are now appearing day and date on PC that are not live service games, as was previously told to the press and the gaming community at large. So this is where things are very interesting. However you want to look at it, PlayStation seems to be not only entertaining, but implementing day and date for its single player games and live service games on PC. So they are following the market where it leads. There seems to be an advantage for them there. And at the end of the day, anybody that comes around and says, oh, they want to bring in Xbox into this conversation because Xbox is putting its games on PC day and date, hence it doesn't have any true exclusives and so on and so forth, I think you're holding on to an old archaic business model that even PlayStation themselves has pretty much washed their hands off of. They're not going to support that business model by any means, because that business model is one that keeps your game in a very dangerous place. Now, as to going to say maybe other consoles, they seem to also be very open to it as well. I mean, if you go ahead and look at Lego Horizon Adventures, that game did not just stop with a release on PC. It was a game that made its way to Nintendo, which is what made it really peculiar at the end of the day. It launched day one on Nintendo. And not only is it launching on PS5, Nintendo, and PC, it did not launch on PS4, which signals that PlayStation is trying to find a way to pull those its own users on the PS4 out of PS4 and into the PS5 ecosystem. So again, this is really interesting to go back and start seeing what all has gone down, seeing the reaction of gamers to when these games first moved their way to PC, where they said, oh, it's devaluing the brand. And I know that that is a very silly sentiment. I have to remind Xbox, PlayStation fans, when they try to say to Xbox that, oh, your game's going to console is devaluing the brand, when their own fans were saying that PC launch was devaluing the brand. So if they want to actually go that far, then their brand has already been devalued for, about 5 years ago, which anybody who made that argument will sound very silly today. But now the shifting of the goalpost is where the temptation wants to basically lie. And to that, I don't think we can do that. We can only conclude that there is a strategic benefit across the board for these companies to launch their game on pretty much the second biggest platform that actually exists out there. It is what it is. And this is why you look at the entire conversation from a data-driven perspective. I think they've looked at Lost Soul Aside. I think they've looked at its capacity. They've maybe done, some internal testing. Their predictions is that a game like that is going to need as many sales as possible. I don't think they predicted properly for, Stellar Blade. Or maybe they predicted and thought that PlayStation fans were going to buy a lot of copies of Stellar Blade, ended up buying only about 1 million plus copies. And then it was like, when it comes down to some of these games, maybe if they're not the games that we can guarantee 10, 15, 20 million, they're going straight to PC day one. So if you want to actually look at how the data set goes, if there's another Ratchet and Clank game, there's a likelihood that that's going to go to PC. If there's another Returnal game, there's a likelihood that's going to go to PC day one. The reason I say there's a likelihood is simply because a lot of these games, are not necessarily selling like Spider-Man. So if we wanted to do a tier list, which I'll try my best to do in a separate video, it appears to me that based on profitability and sales, you're more than likely going to be seeing some of these single player games day and date, while some will stay on PlayStation as timed exclusives for the time being before they are leveraged on other platforms to make more money. Talk to me in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching the video. Appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.